This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
On this August 10th, this Wednesday morning, we say it's morning right now. Maybe you're catching this in the afternoon, the evening. Maybe you're listening to this at 3 in the morning. I love we get emails from Real Talkers every once in a while in those the early morning hours. If that's when your creative juices flow, you're the same as me. That's when we hammer things out and get things done and do some of our most significant thinking. And we have evidence of that with some of the emails we want to get to today. Jesperson here with Hicks, and we wanted to start the show today with a shout out to Brenda, who chimed in on our live chat just a moment ago. She says to us on this Wednesday, she apologizes for being late. This is where Brenda and I will never see eye to eye. It's not a bad thing, Brenda. I'll acknowledge right now you're in the right, I'm in the wrong. But Brenda was just late for being as early as she usually is. When I'm late, I'm late. Brenda says, I'm sorry I'm late to the chat. She says, I was just listening to Seriously, which filled our buckets. A new episode of Seriously with Sapri and Ryan is out, and thanks to everybody who checks it out, everybody that subscribes to Seriously with Sapri and Ryan, wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can check it out online at seriouslypod.com, and you can follow us on all the social media platforms.
We work hard on Wednesdays, that's for sure. We get here.
It's been a long day already.
We get here before the rooster starts crowing.
Oh, man. And big shout out to you, John, doing just an amazing job on that project. And we're having a lot of fun with it. It's a different vibe. Here on Real Talk, we have the you might call it like a news magazine format. We have the longer form conversations where we really get into stories. Two of them coming up today. It's going to be a difficult conversation about a half an hour from now with two alumni from this Saskatoon private school that is all over the news. It's Legacy Christian Academy. It used to be known as Saskatoon Christian Centre Academy. You may have seen it online, people talking about CCA. This is the school where 18 former students have come forward, and you could maybe say 18 and counting, alleging circumstances of abuse. They talk about being isolated, being gaslit, being manipulated. The school officials allegedly conducting gay exorcisms, paddling students, putting them into solitary confinement. One of those students, as a matter of fact, the one that got the ball rolling on this with a pretty powerful Facebook post a while ago, is Sean Kotelmach, and Sean's going to join us along with, we think, Jillian Kudryk. That'll be in about a half hour, and we'll get into that story. That's one that's receiving national attention for a number of different reasons. People want to talk about accountability in private schools. People want to talk about oversight and safety for students in schools like these. And of course, many people, including government official opposition in Saskatchewan, want to talk about funding for private or charter schools. I know we're opening up a can with this story, and it's probably about damn time. That's going to be a powerful conversation, no doubt. Before then, we're going to talk to a former colleague of both Johnny and myself with the NHL's Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
None of us work for the team anymore, which means we can speak freely.
Damn them! No,
but Jeff Nash is going to join us. He's a hockey dad, but Jeff's also worked in hockey on a number of different angles. This is a classic example, and you'll see this on Real Talk. It seems like every couple of months we'll do something like this. Someone will send us an email or a Twitter thread or what have you, and it's so good and it's so powerful that after reading the first couple of paragraphs, I will immediately conclude that to properly do justice to the perspective, I cannot simply read the email to you. I can't just read the email in the podcast. We've got to get this person in their own words on the show, and Jeff Nash has agreed to do that. He's wrestling with his kid's future in hockey based on this Hockey Canada scandal, but he's an optimist about it too. And there's a lot of layers to how Jeff approaches this. He's the founder of this Rinks project we're going to talk to you about as well. Super cool Instagram and podcast initiative. He celebrates the outdoor rink. I mean, I know that that's a classic Canadiana sort of exercise for a lot of families in the winter months. He built one this past winter and documented it. All the news stations were talking about it. He had a ton of attention on Instagram around it, but it helped shape or form his opinions on his family's involvement with hockey moving forward, and I think it's going to be a good one. We also have an email from Brad about that, too. I want to get into it right out of the gates today. Brad was in touch with us to talk at ryanjesperson.com. We chatted about this yesterday, obviously, and the conversation will continue. The World Juniors kicking off in Edmonton yesterday amid these allegations of sexual abuse involving Team Canada players from 2003, 2018. So it's, I don't mean to be glib, and I don't mean to use a word that doesn't carry enough power, but it's an awkward time. It's a very awkward time for many of Canada's hardcore hockey fans, including Brad. Brad says, I'm not here to defend Hockey Canada or anything like that. What has happened is horrifying, clearly. He says, like that contingency fund, for example, the one that was paid out millions of dollars to complainants, to people who have survived alleged sexual assaults and were essentially, can I use the word placated? They were silenced in some ways. The allegations or the potential suits were settled out of court with this contingency fund. Millions of dollars. Some of those dollars, no doubt, coming in from hockey registration fees. It's why a lot of us are wrestling with this. Brad says the fund, in large part, I think like the vast majority probably feel the same about this, I think, but of course I can't say for sure. I think a lot of that money was probably used to pay damages to survivors or victims of Graham James in particular, and that's an important detail we need to discuss. It's not a fund that has specifically been created to cover up crime, Brad says, and I seem to be hearing that implied, and I wanted to address it. With regards to how I personally feel, this affects really nothing about me or how I feel watching Team Canada. This is a bigger problem, says Brad, a societal problem. But these allegations are high-profile examples. Anything related to hockey gets our nation's attention. But I do think this is an every corner of society problem. He says it's a politics problem. It's a problem in industries like construction. He says, what about filmmaking? Look at Hollywood. This is an everything problem. And Brad says, as I continue to listen, I do agree with what I'm hearing about how terrible this is and how disgusting it is. And there's just like this tickle in the back of my mind that feels like maybe we're missing something. He says, I think that hammering Hockey Canada, talking about fees and people needing to be fired, some of this does need to happen. It should happen. But I do think that Canada should be participating in this tournament. He says, I don't know. It feels to me like too much and not enough at the same time. It feels like maybe if we were to cancel our participation in the World Junior Hockey Championship, it might let society in general off the hook in a way. He says, I think I need to keep stewing on this, and I appreciate your continued coverage. It's like Brad's wrestling with this as he writes the email. It's evident, and I really appreciate that too. We're going to get to some emails as well a little bit later on in the show. One of you, Anton, has a theory about that essay bronze medal winner, the one that we talk about it on Seriously in this week's episode, Out of the Gates. I wasn't for sure guaranteed that Supriya was going to get into it, but I suspected that she might want to tee that up, and it just goes to show that people across the country are paying attention to this podium-placing essay that essentially drags out Nazi theories from the 1930s. If you don't believe me, just wait till the emails we're about to get in. One from Jenny, who wrote in particular very powerful stuff. Jenny of Jewish faith, or at least Jewish heritage. She writes in on her perspective the idea of so-called foreigners replacing Albertans, the idea of medals being bestowed upon families that have more than 2 kids. Jenny with a bit of a history lesson for us. And so those are coming up a little bit later on in the show. Before we get to the Hockey Canada story, I want to remind you that this is a perfect time today for you to swing by covenantfoundationlottery.ca and get your ticket to support continued health care in this region. 30 years of life-changing wins through the Covenant Foundation Lottery, but they need your support today. It's been for over 160 years that Covenant Health has made a huge difference for patients and their loved ones. They've been at the forefront of tech innovation, and they've been a leader in palliative and urgent care. Well, you can help that legacy continue by getting your tickets today. A chance to live in life-changing luxury with a $2.2 million dream home. You can see all the details. Get your tickets at covenantfoundationlottery.ca. We already know your plan if you win this, Johnny. You're going to live in it for 1 calendar year to avoid the taxes, and then you're going to sell it. I think if I were to win this house, I think I'd make the move in. 2.2 mil, pal.
It's a nice house. It's just too big for me. You got the family, right?
Yeah, but think of the parties you could throw on your backyard patio, your botanical room. The coolest part about it, it's furnished and ready to move in. You can find out more about these prizes at covenantfoundationlottery.ca or give them a call at 1-888-944-2774 and keep an eye out for the Festive Dream Dollars Initiative and a whole bunch of other cool reasons to get involved. Our friends at Athabasca University, yeah, we know they're in the news, and we're going to be covering this story coming up, we hope, by week's end. Of course, there's a lot of levers being pulled when it comes to the funding for Canada's online university, but that's not why I'm talking about them right now. I'm talking about them now to remind you that the online element of Athabasca University makes it a perfect fit for thousands of Canadian students, regardless of where they are. Even better, the online programs and courses give you the flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. You're never going to fall behind in your course because you had a family emergency or because you wanted to travel or because you needed a day on the patio with your friends. You work at your own pace at athabascau.ca. I talk a lot about our hashtag RealTalkRJ. You know that's powered by the team at Park Power. They want to remind you about the blog section on their website. Just go to parkpower.ca and scroll down. You can learn a whole bunch about some of the stories that relate to the services that they provide. That includes thoughts on where the pricing or perhaps access to natural gas. I mean, everybody's taking a look at inflation and rising rates. You want to know, should they be capped? Should I have a variable rate or a fixed rate? What's the right fit for our family? Great resources available at parkpower.ca where the promo code 2022-RealTalk knocks $70 off your first bill from Park Power. And while we're at it, let's remind you that if energy is your jam, I mean, if you're driving past neighborhoods, new neighborhoods, heritage neighborhoods, and it's the solar panel installations that catch your eye, you're just like me. You can appreciate the clean install, and you wonder how much it's changed their bottom line. Kubi Energy is your number one first stop. That's kubienergy.ca for a free quote today. They've got all the details on this $40,000 interest-free loan. It's available from the federal government right now, so you can get started on your sustainable energy goals. $40,000, an interest-free loan. Why not get started on your solar transition today at kubienergy.ca? So I get this email yesterday. I recognize the name, Jeff Nash from Offshoot Studios. He says, Jasper, I'm watching the show and your segment about Hockey Canada. He says, I've written out many threads on Twitter, but I always default to saving them in my draft folder because of the fear, to be honest. Why? I don't particularly know. Nasher goes on to say it's something that I've been meaning to get off my chest, maybe to help parents that are on the fence. I don't know. He says, I'm also looking to register one of my sons in hockey this year for the first time. Jeff says, I got a complex relationship with the sport. Besides coaching, working as an agent, I've seen the sport from every angle, like player, official, Zamboni driver, rec hockey participant, hockey production at the highest levels. I have deep roots in the sport. And he goes on from there. As mentioned, I reached out to Jeff and I said, you got to just join me on the show, pal. Let's talk this out. And he's agreed to do it. I'm grateful for it. It's a pleasure to welcome Jeff Nash to the show in what probably, John, correct me if I'm wrong, is a top 5 studio setup all time for a Real Talk guest.
I had a feeling it would be.
We knew that he wasn't going to check in from some lousy basement studio. Nash, most people are going to hear this on the podcast, so let's describe it. It looks to me like you're surrounded by seats from the old rink.
Yep. Yeah, I got some old Rexall place seats. Spent many days just like yourself in the old barn, and I've got I just kind of collected stuff when I worked in the NHL. I collected toques and beanies and pucks and jerseys and press passes and patches and everything. So I kind of made a little home studio for my YouTube channel, and so yeah. I think it looks good.
Shout out for the old Poly 2K, the Paul Kariya sweater behind you. I love that Anaheim Ducks jersey. I know some people. That's one of my favorites, and Paul Kariya, one of the all-time greats out of Canada. People don't talk about Paul Kariya enough. Do you agree?
Yeah, he's kind of a quiet. Being half Japanese like myself, having roots in the Asian community, he's we're pretty reserved, which is ironic because I'm on the show talking. But we're pretty quiet. We kind of try to let the action on the ice speak for itself. And he was definitely an idol of mine growing up when I played minor and junior hockey.
Jeff, I'm really grateful that you've agreed to talk to us on the show. Your email impacted me. I read it twice back to back when you sent it, and it was a long one. You poured out your heart. And what I especially appreciate about this, and where I think that a lot of people are going to relate to this conversation, is this isn't people that are looking to pile on the sport. This isn't people that have had an animosity toward hockey or hockey players or hockey culture forever and have been looking to grind an axe or bury those for whom they have had a great degree of disdain. But you're not ignoring some of the very real issues that are plaguing this sport. Take us into your relationship with the sport. It's pretty self-evident based on your background and what you've told us to this point, but I know you've been wrestling in a way that a lot of people have, including me.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned off the top, I played minor hockey. I've officiated, worked for Hockey Canada, worked for the Oilers, and seen the sport almost in every direction and angle. And I love it. Like that's the biggest struggle that I have with the sport is I absolutely love the sport. I still play rec hockey and still love watching hockey all the time. But there's a flip side of that too. And there's things that I endured as a junior hockey player growing up in the late 90s. And some other experiences during minor hockey, like not all negative, but there's definitely things that I endured during my time playing hockey that I don't want to, like, it's prevented me from signing my kids up for hockey because I don't want them to endure some of the things that I've went through and stuff. So yeah, it's been a real struggle. And when I watched the episode yesterday, it's been a busy summer for me, so I've been kind of in and out of watching the news, what's happening. But take the last few years with Hockey Canada, Kyle Beach, like there's a lot of things that are making the headlines, and it keeps in my head. I wrestle with this, like I love the sport, but there's things that I don't like about it, and hopefully, I hope the majority of that email that I sent you was kind of like, I talked to some friends and stuff, and I want to try to be a part of the change, not just looking at it and saying, oh, get over it, sweep it under the rug. Like it happened ages ago. Why are we talking about it? I want to be a part of my kids' hockey career, and to other parents, hopefully to look at me and go, we don't like certain things about it. We want to change it.
Well, and let's be honest, in life, maybe this isn't the case for everybody, but I know it's certainly the case for me, that sometimes when you're being called to the carpet, or when something that you are, or something that you represent, or something that you love is proven to be at fault or to be problematic, or it can get very uncomfortable, and we don't like to be uncomfortable. And sometimes we're hesitant to make others uncomfortable, and so we choose not to go there. I mean, I was really intrigued by you saying that you've written these long, thoughtful Twitter threads, but they're all in your saved draft folder because why?
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, now I'm like, well, now I'm on the show talking about it, so that's obviously that hesitation's. You encourage me to speak out. So, but yeah, I think hockey is. Like it always gets compared to religion in this country, and often people, when they say anything negative towards it, there's blowback. There's people like, oh man, like come on, shut up, why are we bringing this up? The sport's fine and stuff like that. And what people what they don't realize is that when issues like this come up, even the Hockey Canada stuff, even the Kyle Beach and the Blackhawks stuff, is progression comes from it. If you don't address these issues, if you don't talk about it, if you don't try to understand how to deal with it appropriately, there's no progression in the sport. And I think that's what's lost in people. People don't want to feel uncomfortable, but with that uncomfortable feeling comes a silver lining. There's something that comes out of it. So hopefully next time, if it does ever happen again, whatever it is, that there's a plan in place and we can deal with it appropriately. And I think that's what's missing is people get really uptight, like don't talk about hockey like that. But if we talk about these difficult things, things happen, and there's been some progression in the sport. In the email I wrote you, I do take small wins. Like you do see more women in sports. NHL is hiring more women involved in management positions. Even the land acknowledgement at Oilers games, like I look at those as like they're small, but they're big wins, and they really matter to people that they affect, right? And the Oilers should take pride in that. I think they're the only ones that do it in the league, and that's big. And so when we have these uncomfortable conversations, good things come from it, and I think that's what people miss.
Is interesting, and it's Chief Wilton Littlechild, for people that haven't had a chance to attend an Oilers game in person, that delivers that land acknowledgement. I mean, he's the one that just put a headdress on the Pope for perspective. I mean, this guy has been a major figure in, can I call it the reconciliation movement, at least, in Treaty 6, Treaty 7 territory, and into Treaty 8. I mean, his impact has been widely felt. I'll be honest, just anecdotally, Jeff, I thought that the Oilers would do that land acknowledgement one time. I thought it was like, I was actually surprised that it became a regular part of the pregame, where it is delivered before every game, and I think it's fantastic. I also think that the Oilers, and we don't have to spend all our time talking about the Oilers. It's not particularly about the Oilers, but also they were the first NHL team to rock the Pride tape in a pregame warm-up, and you look at some of the embarrassing things that are happening in Alberta right now, and quite frankly, the reputation that Alberta has, either deserved or undeserved, we can debate that, across the country is a bunch of redneck hillbillies. And you look at the leadership that the Oilers have shown in the heart of oil country on some of the more progressive or empathetic initiatives, and I think that the team deserves a lot of credit. You make a good email, though, and again, this is a comment now, the bigger picture, the hockey world in general. In your email to me, you said you do see women executives being hired, and you see some of the movements around the right to play movement and around minorities in sport and the LGBTQ2S+ community, et cetera. But you do make a good point, and you're not wrong. You say it's mostly reactionary, which I think is an important point too.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I think that's maybe a side issue that kind of I wish was better in hockey, is that someone on leadership or on exec level has the foresight to look into the future and read the tea leaves, so to speak, and say, okay, what's going to be coming up? What are things that are going to come up as issues? And racism, hockey is for everyone. These initiatives, I think, they have good intentions. The Pride tape is an awesome symbol, and hopefully that snowballs into more just kind of culture things in the sport, because it definitely needs more support that way. But yeah, I mean, again, the stuff that has come out, whether it's in the NHL, Hockey Canada, or minor hockey, you would think from an organizational standpoint, it kind of makes sense that they don't want to address it, because it means that they have to acknowledge it and admit a lot of stuff that's happened. But a lot of these initiatives are things that happen are after the fact. Like a big thing has happened, and then the NHL is like, okay, this is how we're gonna fix it, or we're launching our new Hockey's for Everyone campaign and stuff like that. And it would be nice if there was staff or executives on the boards or whatever to look at society as a general and be like, okay, so how does this fit into hockey, and how can we adapt hockey to meet these societal issues going forward? But yeah, it's mostly reactionary, and I think, again, for someone with Japanese background with the racism thing, it's great to see. But players of all races have been dealing with that in hockey for a long time.
Still.
And yeah,
still, I mean, you talked about Kyle Beach and the Chicago Blackhawks and the alleged sexual abuse and that kind of stuff. But I mean, what about like Bill Peters being fired as head coach? I mean, we've seen some like yesterday, Jasper Nash on the show, author of Game Misconduct. She joined us from the States, and she's talking about John Van Beesbrook, who's like still calling a ton of the shots with USA Hockey. I mean, that's still a major issue. I'd love for people to find you on Twitter and Instagram. You're the founder of this Rinks Around the League project. They can find you at _the rinks. Can you tell us how building this ODR, this outdoor rink, this backyard rink with your kids has shaped or contributed to your perspective right now?
Yeah. So mini rink, I built honestly on a whim a little bit, because we had a big dump of snow, and my yard is really uneven, so that's why I haven't built a rink in it. And we got this huge dump of snow, and I was like, you know what, I want to build it. And so, when I emailed you, I mentioned that it was kind of twofold. One, I wanted to kind of do it for, my YouTube channel, to show people like, you don't really need plastic or boards or anything. You just need snow and water. And maybe if you wanted to paint your ice, you can do a little paint to make a really cool rink. And the second reason why I built it is to get my kids out. COVID, rewind to last year at this point, we were all worried about back to school, if schools were going to go back into in person, and the Christmas break, when we had I can't remember what wave we were on at that point, but my kids needed to go outside. I think mom and dad's mental health really needed to a break. So I built this rink, and kind of the really cool byproduct of it is that my kids, in particular my sons, just grew to love the sport. And I worked, a better part of a decade in pro sports, and it wasn't meeting Wayne Gretzky. It wasn't working for the team and flying all over the North America with a professional club that got my boys into, I want to try hockey. It was, I built this rink, they went out on it, and my youngest in particular just was hooked every single day. -40 didn't matter. And that's kind of what got me to realize that my children got to experience the sport in its purest form, which is just a frozen sheet. You go out and play, you spend some energy. He wanted to get better at it and stuff. And, it's that love of the game that I think we all come back to. And I think that's what we wrestle with all the stuff coming out, is like, we all love this game. And we have to remember that it is a game. It's not necessarily our children growing up to be the next Connor McDavid. It's about, reconnecting with the sport at its purest form and having fun. And I think that was an amazing byproduct of the rink, is that my kids got to experience the game how I did when I was a kid, grew up to love it. And I think that's kind of was a major sway into rethinking signing my kids up for hockey.
So you've got this love of the game implanted in your kids now, and they've felt, to me, like some of the greatest sounds on planet Earth are like a skate blade cutting through ice on an outdoor rink, or that echo, it
sounds different when it's -40. Oh my God. The sound of steel on ice, it just sounds cold.
It does sound cold. And my toes are feeling cold right now as we're talking. It's like this subliminal thing. So you're considering entering your kids into minor hockey. I talked about this with Jasmina yesterday. I said, I had two windows open on my computer. One of them is her piece in the Globe saying that Hockey Canada might need to be disbanded if they can't figure this out. And the other tab is me paying my entry fee for my little guy to play Hawks hockey this winter. And I'm just being honest. It just was it's a strange place to be. And we want to make the right decision, not just as parents or hockey parents, but also as humans, as Canadians, as empathetic people. And I thought it was really interesting as you divulged in this email that I'll bring this back to again. You say, based on your experiences in junior hockey in particular, with hazing in particular, that had precluded you from even considering entering your kids in the sport before. So how are you reconciling that now? Can you shine some light on the hazing experience and how that impacts you to this day?
Yeah, so I don't... I've kind of addressed it publicly a little bit, especially when, Kyle Beach's story came out. The hazing that I endured in junior hockey is as bad, if not worse. I think it really put in perspective. I played Friday night rec hockey, and we had a younger kid with us. I call him kid. He's probably like 30, 32. And we kind of got talking into hockey and stuff. And I don't know why the topic of hazing came up, but he's like, well, come on, what did you endure? And I kind of told him a couple of things, and he's just like, oh geez, yeah, that's bad. And I'll put it this way. When I went through the hazing, when I played junior hockey, the way I saw it was, and maybe this speaks to hockey culture, is that I as a kid at the time, understood it as kind of a part of the process. Like, in order to pay your dues per se, that was part of the process of being welcomed into the junior hockey world. weeks prior to hazing going on, the vets on the team are like, "Oh, rookies, you're gonna get it, you're gonna get it," and they kind of like, you just wait, you never know what's gonna happen. And I'll never forget, after practice one day, we were all in the locker room, and some of the vets were walking around and like, "Who wants to go first?" And me being, wanting to prove myself, and me being a young kid, I put up my hand because I didn't want to show them that I was afraid. I wasn't going to be afraid of what they were going to do to me. And, that happened. A lot of stuff happened. And after that happened, I think they did a couple groups. So it was like me and like, I would say about 4 other rookies at the time. And they did it in stages. And I think the first night was obviously the worst, because after that, management did catch wind, and they kind of put a shutdown to it. Nowadays, talking with other players and stuff, it's no more than, they take them out and get them, have drinks, and they have to wear embarrassing clothing and stuff like that. As a kid, I understood it was a mechanism to kind of embarrass you and belittle you and welcome you to the team. And after what I went through was done, one of the senior guys came up, shook my hands, and said, "Welcome to the team." And I actually felt good about it. Like, you, as a kid playing hockey, you're like, "Okay, I'm in. I'm in with the group."
And next season, I get to do it to the rookies.
Yeah, well, I knew right then I was not going to be doing any part of the hazing. It was bad. I went through it, but I had no part moving forward in any of that, because I think even then I recognized that it was bad. But as you get older and you understand that some things aren't appropriate.
Well, Jeff, it's like we don't have to get into. We're not going to get into the details. I hinted at something earlier, and then even, to be honest with you, mentally, after we did that episode of Real Talk, I thought that maybe wouldn't have been mine to share. Even naming the junior hockey club that a friend of mine played on, I certainly didn't talk about what his hazing looked like, but he told me, and it's brutal. It's sexual assault, is what it was.
Basically,
and there's physical abuse and everything that comes with it. I don't want to say, but let me say, in things like, I'm sure, like the Navy SEALs, probably the Canadian Armed Forces, different team structures, maybe even starting work in kitchens. I mean, we've talked about in hospitality, there's issues. There's issues in many different industries. There is that idea of paying your dues, of earning your stripes, of becoming part of the team, of showing that you know the value of work. And that might be something like the rookies on the team loading the hockey bags onto the bus with the trainers. And I think that there can be value to a certain degree with newcomers to a team or group doing something to establish themselves as part of that group to so-called earn those stripes. I do think that there's part of that provides some value, but it's just gone so far past that it gets to the point now where, to walk it back, you almost get to a point where you believe that we've got to just stop it full stop. The lines have become so blurred. Yeah, and I think compared to a lot of hockey players and people involved in the game, I think my other experiences in life, I spent 10 years in nonprofits. I worked for children's camps. I was a program director for 50 young adults that came over the country to work with kids with special needs and stuff. There's a way to handle that. It's just a matter of they're being taught. There's people that and rightfully so, deal with these issues, whether it's legally or not. I look at my time during what I experienced. I recognize the mechanism of it, and I've kind of made peace with it. I recognize it's wrong, and I recognize that it shouldn't be anything that moves forward. Honestly, I can't even remember who did it to me. I was blindfolded at the time, so I don't even know. But the people who did it to me were probably taught that from somebody else. And so my experience with nonprofits and camps. The way we do it, it's not necessarily hazing per se, but to your point, there's a time and a place for people to understand, to pay your dues, like you said. Yeah.
But with my experience with working with nonprofits, there's a much more productive way to go about doing it, rather than embarrassing and belittling and doing illegal stuff. Like there's a way to do it where you celebrate them on the team rather than treating them like dirt.
Yeah,
so
it's
there's a way to do it.
The corporate team building idea of like, everybody does the trust fall or whatever. I was like, for a lot of people like me, that's actually their worst nightmare is the corporate team building. But you're right. I mean, there's different ways to endear somebody or welcome somebody or integrate somebody into a team atmosphere. That
because what happens with what I experienced and maybe what your friend also experienced is that then it spills into, well, do I want my kid to be a part of this? And that's what they don't think about at the time. But then, it manifests in your head of like, well, I don't want my kid to do this. And that's kind of, you talk about how it affected me later in life. That did resonate with me. And I think the thing that trumped all that was mini rink and seeing my kids genuinely love the game and the sport. That trumped. And hopefully when they play hockey this fall, they'll fall in love with it like I did. And hopefully I can try to mitigate as much as the negative stuff as much as possible.
I highlighted one thing, well, many things in your email, but one of them was you said, I also feel, you said to see if the sport at that level has changed at all. That's what you're entertaining the idea of your kids playing. You say it's going to basically this season be a trial to see if the culture has changed enough that I'll let my son be a part of it, because in the end, he can play other sports. You say, but I also feel like it's an opportunity for me as a dad to be the change in hockey culture. And I think that that's an amazing area for a lot of people to find focus, including me.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe another thing that gets lost in all this is that, the organizations at the top level are, they're having to wear everything that's happened right now because of the way they kind of dealt with things. And at the end of the day, when it comes to especially amateur sport, not just in hockey, but all sports across the board, is that we have the biggest impact. It doesn't, Hockey Canada, the NHL, or I don't know what the soccer football leagues are or whatever in Canada. They can put all the rules in place they want, but at the end of the day, it's the coaches and the parents at the ground level that have the opportunity to really influence their kids and other kids too on how to behave. The line of when kids play hockey that they dress up in suits and are taught to be proper gentlemen off the ice, and to really foster that and show kids that if XYZ happens in a locker room, no, that's not okay. I don't care about the code of the room where what happens in a locker room stays in a locker room. If certain things happen, like, no, that's not okay.
Look where that's gotten us.
Yeah, exactly. And for the longest time, especially when you're in hockey, it's really you kind of live by that code. It's almost like an honor code. Like, well, nope, we don't talk about what happens in the room. But there's certain limitations to that. Like, obviously, if you're joking around or talking about stuff like, yeah, okay, you can talk about like buddies, like kind of like rec hockey rooms today. Like we all talk about, it's funny. The conversation switches more to daycare and insurance and prices and stuff like that. The conversation definitely
people
changes.
Might think, yeah.
Yeah. But it's being a role model. And hopefully I am like that for my kids and for whoever he plays with this winter. And I think I challenge all parents that if you are kind of on the fence, ask your kids if they love the sport. I have a hard time parents pulling something away because of what other people's do. So if you're not happy with the way Hockey Canada or the hockey culture is, you can pull them out and that's fine. But I also think that if your kid is wanting to play, you can foster that love of the game, because hockey does bring a ton of great stuff. I mean, I built my life and my career almost around the sport. I still love the sport, regardless of what happened to me in junior hockey, regardless of all the stuff that happens. Like there's nothing beats the feeling of just playing hockey and going out for a skate. So, no one's going to be able to take that away. And I think that's the one thing that out of all the stuff that I experienced is, whatever they did to me in that locker room in junior hockey is not going to take away my love of the game. Like that's permanent. I will live with that my whole life.
You can find Jeff Nash, subscribe to his YouTube channel, Rinks Around the League. He's on Instagram and Twitter as well, and I'm so grateful. You're obviously a very thoughtful guy, Jeff. I know that you've really contemplated whether or not you wanted to put this all out there on the record, and I know that this is going to benefit a lot of folks like me who are really wrestling with where we stand on this and what moving forward looks like, taking a position of leadership in our own family units, in our communities, and at the rink. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you are a parent, I'm sure you can reach out to Ryan here, but reach out to me. Like people who have had these real experiences, we can help hopefully tip the scales on making that decision for your child this winter. But yeah, reach out. I mean, the worst part of all this is making a decision on your own without talking with parents and just talking in general. So yeah, reach out to myself or Ryan or another parent. It's important to talk about these things because I think at the end of the day, you'll feel better about it.
Jeff Nash, looking forward to the next time our paths cross, pal. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah,
take care.
You got it. Talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can send us an email and take Jeff up on his offer. I know that it's obvious. He's coming at this from a sincere standpoint, and he wants to start these conversations or continue these conversations. That's very evident, and he has my respect full on. If your family is looking to maybe expand the capabilities of what your road tripping looks like, if you're looking to pick up a truck or maybe an SUV that can pull that trailer that you've either just bought or maybe you're thinking of investing in, there's some great tools for you, shopping tools in a sense, online at sherwooddodge.com and stalbertdodge.com. Videos on how you can connect with your new vehicle, on how you can reset maintenance lights, on how you can set your selectable tire fill alerts, on how to replace wiper blades. I mean, this is like basic stuff, but it's stuff that can give us fits, right? It's a peek into how these dealerships approach their customer relations. They know that the car business can be an intimidating one for folks, and it's why they've provided so many resources to make it a seamless and easy process for you as you find your next ride. Oh, and if you're taking a look at the prices at the pumps and looking to downsize too, they've got a great pre-owned selection, affordable options for you and your family at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. Our friends at Friesen Brothers, we talk a lot about the 16 locations across the province of Alberta, but is there one flying under your radar, maybe closer than you think? We wanted to give a shout out to the Friesen Brothers this morning in Barrhead and Drumheller, in Edmonton, our hometown, in Fairview, Fort Saskatchewan, Fox Creek. Grand Prairie's got a beautiful one. So does Hannah and High Prairie and Hinton Hill and Hinton Valley. On the way through to Jasper, don't miss it. Manning, Stony Plain, Sundre, Peace River, and Valley View all call Friesen Brothers, a major player in their communities. Family owned for more than 65 years. Alberta grown, Alberta owned. You can learn more about them at friesen.com. Eden Landscaping wants to remind you that there's so many more options out there for your front yard than that tired old tree and that sod you're just nursing along, trying to keep it alive. It looks brutal. The dandelions have taken over. You know it. But man, oh man, you don't feel like breaking your back to get that work done? Why not get in touch with Mike and his team today? Ask them about their urban butterfly front yard design. It attracts pollinators, it's eco-friendly, and they feature some of the native plants and grasses appropriate for your region. It's where the trends are going, and it's Eden Landscaping leading those trends at landscapeedmonton.ca. And this next interview is presented by our friends at Apex Automation. They're putting out a call for talented, skilled, ambitious engineers across the country that are looking to make a bigger impact, not just within their company, but with the clients they serve as well. Apex Automation is providing intuitive, fully autonomous solutions to industry and giving people back their time. If you're looking to make a career change, why not make it Apex Automation? You can check out the careers link today at apexautomation.ca. This next story is a difficult one to talk about, no doubt. I know that some of you are survivors of abuse. You've been taken advantage of in many circumstances over a period of years in school settings. The perpetrators, people you were supposed to be able to trust. This is a high-profile story out of the province of Saskatchewan, specifically Saskatoon, relating to a school formerly known as the Christian Centre Academy. It's affiliated with Mile 2 Church. Now it's operating as Legacy Christian Academy. This is the school where at least 18 students have come forward, alleging incidents of abuse, being paddled, so-called gay exorcisms, being held in solitary isolation. They've been talked about gaslightings and ongoing perpetual manipulative tendencies by administrators, staff, and teachers at this school. These students that have come forward, prompted no doubt in part by a powerful Facebook post by an individual that's agreed to join us today. Sean Kotelmach is one of the alumni of Christian Centre Academy. Jillian Kudryk is as well. And the two of them joining us on the record this morning on Real Talk. I appreciate both of your availability. I know that this is no doubt a difficult conversation to have. Sean, how did this start? I'm going to ask maybe if one of you has your computer speakers on to kill those speakers if possible. It's echoing in our feed here. But Sean, what prompted you to come forward with this Facebook post? Can you tell us the story?
I was just hanging out with a couple of my friends who had been through the system, and there was a rumor that came up about one of our teachers and his sexual intentions with a few of the students. And the way the story was told to me was kind of like, we need to keep this hush hush. We need, to keep it quiet. And after that night, I slept on it for a few days, and I just kept waking up with rage towards the school and the individuals there. And I felt like I just needed to not keep it a secret anymore and tell as many people as I could and out him. And I woke up, outed him on Facebook, just saying that he was doing inappropriate sexual acts with some of the students. And the feedback on that, the comments, the shares, the reach out on that post went further than most of my other posts, and it really got me thinking. Just how well, it just kind of showed how many people were affected, and that I wasn't alone, and I didn't just have a unique experience, and other people had similar experiences. And then that's when Caitlin Erickson, the first student who came forward, reached out to me and said, if you go to the cops, I'll be right behind you. So at that point, we're kind of working up the courage to go to the cops. And as soon as Caitlin Erickson found out that John Olababokin was leading another school in the city, they gave her enough courage to go to the cops. She reached out to me, and then I beelined it to the police station to give them my statement. And then it's kind of just snowballed from there. More people see that other people have been speaking up. It gives us the courage knowing that we're not alone. And that's how the ball got started.
Well, I'm hoping that both of you can ensure that we're up to the minute with our understanding of where this story is at. I mean, I know that there have certainly been calls and potentially a criminal investigation underway right now, but the official opposition, the NDP in Saskatchewan, is calling for a government inquiry into this. They want to see funding frozen for the school, and that may just be the tip of the iceberg here. And my understanding is that there could be some other court implications as well, which we'll get into. But Jillian, how does this story involve you? You're obviously someone who attended this school. Would you tell us your personal story and maybe how this is all resonating with you up to the minute?
I went to Christian Centre Academy. I started in grade 2, and then we left when I was in grade 9. I actually wouldn't have said anything. It was something I just kind of built up for years. You know, even family members, some of them didn't even know what we went through. But if it wasn't for Caitlin, Sean, Cody, a bunch of them, you know, going on the news, I probably would never have said anything at all, because it took a lot of courage. I mean, there was a lot of trauma that I didn't want to talk about and I didn't want to deal with. But I guess we're all a team and we can all do this together.
So how are you with regards to your personal experience there? How are you reconciling or how are you processing, is a better word, what you're seeing now? I mean, it's no small thing for 18, almost 20 former students to come forward, and some of the things that they're sharing are quite frankly horrific. Are you finding some comfort in the sense that you're able to tell your story and that there may be some accountability? It's no doubt been a difficult experience for you, I would imagine.
Yes, it definitely has been difficult. But like Caitlin said yesterday, it's been a long time coming. I reached out to Caitlin because I wanted to do something. I wanted to make my story told. So I had went to the police, and once I did that, I realized how many more people there were. Even last night, I was getting messages on Facebook saying, how do I make my story told? What do I do first? What steps do I take to do this? So, it's people I haven't talked to in probably 15 years, and they're reaching out to me on Facebook, so the more we tell our stories, the more we talk about it, the more we're reconnecting with people who went through the same kind of trauma. And, a lot of us didn't know we were all going through that, because in that school and in that church, everything was hush hush. If you had an issue, you were to talk to your counselor. My counselor told me always, bite your tongue, because I would say something or question authority, and right away I was getting in trouble for something. I was getting paddled, or I was getting sent to the office. I was speaking with a counselor, and I'm sure most other students were doing the same, because the more, we hear their stories, it's all the same story. They've been put in the exact same situation as us.
Sean, you have spoken publicly and openly about your experiences at the school formerly known as Christian Centre Academy, now again operating as Legacy Christian Academy. For perspective, people will be interested to know the school received almost $1 million in funding from the Saskatchewan government last year, about $200,000 of that for COVID support. Their annual funding, more than $700,000. You've talked about the isolation that you experienced. I'm not talking about not being included in a peer group. You were actually physically isolated for extended periods of time. Would you mind telling us about that and helping us understand what was going on?
For sure. So they change their forms of punishment almost daily. And one of their creative punishments was detention. And when you're born in this kind of school, detention for you, you didn't really experience it. You're so isolated from public systems and how other schools operate. So you just took it for what it was, detention. But yeah, they took me to one of their empty rooms. And all that was in there was a table up against a plain wall. I would have to show up 15 minutes before school. So I didn't run into any of my friends, go in the room, take my lunches in that room. So I'm in there from 8:45 in the morning to 3:45 p.m. And the only person I would see would be my teacher, who would come in intermittently just to check up on me. And that happened every day for 2 weeks.
Can you give us a sense, Sean, of what would have earned you that confinement, that solitary, that sort of isolation type circumstance? You remember what it was you were being so-called punished for?
I think I wasn't getting my homework done in time.
Huh.
So it was a self-taught system. Even the teachers weren't even licensed teachers. They were just parents within this system. So we basically self-taught ourselves. And I'm dyslexic, so you can imagine how difficult that was for me. So instead of getting the help I needed to get through the work, I was being punished, and they thought that was an effective way for motivation.
Did you say that there weren't certified teachers?
No, they weren't. No.
That has been flying under my radar with regards to this story. So these are just people. These are just people that got tapped on the shoulder within the church community to be in charge of educating young people and administering discipline?
Correct, yes.
Huh. Jillian, when you left the school, what were those next number of years like for you? Did you enter the public system immediately after?
I went to a Catholic school. It was actually right across the park from Christian Centre Academy. And, it was extremely difficult. I went into grade 10. I had finished grade 9 at Christian Centre. I went into grade 10, and I was so far behind. My math was like at a grade 6 level. My reading level was like a grade 5 level. And, in Christian Centre, I was supposed to be going into grade 10. So I was so far behind. So, schoolwork was awful. I was always like with an EA, or I was trying to get caught up, which eventually I did, but it took a lot of work. also just, going and being so isolated at Christian Center to going to a normal school, I obviously dressed super strange, because we had a dress code, we had uniforms at Christian Center. So then going to a normal school, I was an outcast, and I don't know, it just puts you in a very awful position that no one would want to be in, because you don't know what it's like to be in the real world.
Do you still go to church? I know it's a personal question.
I don't anymore. Do I still believe in God? I believe, yes, there's God. I believe there's something else there, but no, I don't go to church. It kind of ruined it for me.
Sean, do you still go to church?
No, I don't. No.
Is that based on your experience at the school?
Yes, I would say it would have a contributing factor. Just how giving any person a position of power and in an isolated scenario is kind of scary. And it's not just our church that I don't really agree with. It's most churches and organizations, because they feel like their belief is above the law and human rights. And I just don't agree with that.
Can you tell me, both of you, but Sean, we'll start with you, about this class action lawsuit? My understanding is that this is a really recent development, like sort of last night into this morning, as we're speaking now on this August 10th, Wednesday morning. Can you share the details with us?
Yeah, sure. So class action lawsuit has been submitted against the church for $25 million in damages. Again, it's been a long time coming. Yeah, it's the process has begun, and we hope just to see some change from it.
Who has joined the class action?
All the 18 victims that have come forward. I am aware of more that have come forward since the news outreach, but I don't know the exact number for the people involved.
Jillian, have you joined the suit?
I have, yes.
What would account?
And so has my younger brother.
Okay. Aside from $25 million or a negotiated settlement or however this plays out, aside from the financial element, what would accountability look like to you? Ultimately, what would accountability represent?
Honestly, for some of them, I would love to see them behind bars. I think that's where they belong. Money doesn't really do it for me. I'd rather just see them locked up, because a lot of them, like the way they treated us, the way they were gaslighting us, the manipulation, isolation, it's sickening. And I think they should be behind bars.
That's one of the things about this story that I'm trying to, from an interviewing standpoint, I'm trying to cover this adequately, but this is not like the allegations are not that one teacher had inappropriate sexual relationships with minors. That is one of the allegations, right? It's not just allegations that gay students were ostracized or even expelled, that so-called gay exorcisms were being held. That's one of the allegations. Students were being paddled. Students were being isolated. I mean, it's a real mess. And Sean, I would imagine when you talk about these, and I'm going to call them survivors, these 18 survivors, these 18 alumni from this school, and there's probably more. How do you wrap your mind around the magnitude of the allegations here?
It is quite daunting. Yeah, it's like the school started in 1982, and they've been doing these things since then, and it's been going on till even today. And we're hoping that the Saskatchewan government steps in and ceases funding for the school so they don't start another school year. But you can imagine the amount of stories from 1982 to today and how many students have been affected. I would say it's in the hundreds of victims.
I can't imagine, to be honest with you. I can't. Yeah. And I can't imagine whether you want to share or not, and I don't want to make any assumptions, either of you, Jillian or Sean, what some of the blowback must look like. And some of the negative feedback, maybe from former students, from staff of that school, from members of the church, from members of the general public, for people who probably believe there's some political element to this. Have you experienced that as well?
The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. I wouldn't say
that's good.
There's too many negative feedback on it. However, when we were out doing the press conference yesterday, we did notice a few familiar faces that showed up, just probably get a good wind of what was going on, and fishing for, like, one individual was there saying, "Oh, it wasn't so bad. The abuse that was happening there wasn't so bad. What are you guys talking about? Like, is this necessary?" And that, angers us, but we just don't give it the time of day because, we have the evidence, we have the stories, we have the shared experiences that prove the people who are ignorant to it and turning a blind eye to it, kind of proving them wrong.
I'm going to venture a guess that the person that's showing up to be the "it wasn't so bad" guy probably wasn't the one being subjected to a gay exorcism. Am I probably accurate in making that assumption? It's a rhetorical question. Jillian, you talked about you and your brother joining this class action. It's a personal question. All of this is personal. I appreciate both of you being willing to talk about this. How has the rest of your family been with regards to the support here?
All my family's been extremely supportive. When I first wanted to go make a police statement, I'm like, do I do this? Do I not? Because I didn't know what kind of attention it was going to bring, negative, positive, but all my family has been super supportive. Even my brother, who hasn't talked about that church or school since we left, I would think, he decided to go make a police statement. And I mean, it's bringing up lots of trauma. I asked him if he wanted to be on the podcast. He's like, it's not something I really want to talk about right now. So, I mean, everyone deals it differently, but yeah, everyone's been really supportive.
And that's all okay, right? I mean, it's remarkable that the two of you are willing to talk about this. I know that your stories are going to help a lot of people that are wrestling with their own personal experiences here, but I don't take for granted how difficult it can be to re-trauma. I mean, a lot of people are being re-traumatized when we talk about this stuff. I feel like I don't want to compare this to residential schools. I don't think that that's productive, and it's probably not necessarily 100% accurate. But at the same time, there are some parallels, aren't there? Like there's the "it wasn't so bad" voice in Canada about residential schools. There's "what was the big deal?" There was the "it was building character." There's the they meant well, narrative that we see. I mean, there are a lot of things that Canadians have been forced to process in the past little while, not just these stories out of Saskatchewan. Before I thank you both for your time, Sean, and no doubt we'll be circling back on this story, I want to give both of you an opportunity to touch on or address something that we may not have talked about. I know that there are so many angles and so many layers to this story that it could be easy to miss something. This will be a national audience that's hearing this, in particular, a ton of people in Western Canada. Is there anything that we've missed that's important that they hear?
Well, if you relate to the stories at all, I recommend speaking up, standing up for yourself. Take back that power that your abuser has taken from you, and you'd be surprised how many people support, especially in today. The focus on mental health these days is a lot more than it has been in previous years. So if there's ever been a good time to come forward and speak up, now's the time.
Last word to you, Jillian, my new friend. Anything that we haven't discussed that's important for people to hear?
Honestly, I think we kind of hit everything on the head. But what Sean was saying, if anyone who was put through abuse or who did suffer, especially at that school, I would really encourage you to go make a police statement and tell your side of the story, because the more the merrier.
Yeah. That's Jillian Kudryk, Sean Kotelmach, both of them alumni of Saskatoon's Christian Centre Academy, which is still now operating as a rebranded, nice try, guys, a rebranded Legacy Christian Academy. My thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity.
And thanks to the audience members that participate in these interviews by submitting your comments, by taking in what these courageous people have to say, and by sharing your experiences with us. You can send us messages off the record. You can send us messages on the record. You know where to find us. talk@ryanjesperson.com. Glenna right now on our live chat wondering what many are, I'm sure, how many other schools have the same appalling practices, how much public funding is supporting these schools. Is the government culpable for funding these schools? Lauren, demanding religious accountability now. Donna, I mean, you're stating the obvious, right? But it's obviously something that needs. Donna says all schools in Canada should require licensed teachers. Yeah, right? That blew my mind in that story.
I couldn't believe that.
There's just people that they're just not even licensed teachers. They're operating. There are 10 things that are being alleged here. And I'm picking the number out of thin air, but so many things being alleged here that would demand the attention of government, police, and the general public. Like one of them, like a teacher alleged, and criminal investigation, we'll find out. I mean, you can't hide from this type of stuff. There's no statute of limitations on this stuff. But statutory rape is what you call it. It always feels like we sort of like blur, we massage these phrases to make them more palatable, to make us less uncomfortable, right? Inappropriate sexual relationships with minors. That's called statutory rape. A pedophile does that. Someone who has inappropriate sexual relationships with children is a pedophile. In this circumstance, an alleged pedophile. Let's find out. But this person reassigned or reallocated or found work in a different school to run away from this. Where have we heard that before? There's another residential school in I don't want to do a disservice to the residential school conversation, and I don't want to do a disservice to this one, but there are some parallels. People are wondering if this is the exact type of school structure that's being proposed by Danielle Smith in Alberta right now. She says she wants to give more choice, more options to people outside of the public school system. I've shared with you, I myself am a graduate of a private Christian school from preschool to grade 9, and then again in college and university, different schools, different institutions. I never experienced sexual abuse. I certainly experienced physical abuse. I've never really talked about it publicly. I know people were appalled in our live chat I saw when Sean started talking about being paddled. That was regular at our school. It was called the strap. You talk to friends of mine and fellow classmates of mine from those years in those schools, and an anger still burns.
I feel like people our age, like,
dude,
we
35
had the strap
years
too.
ago.
We had the strap too back grade 1, 2, 3.
Was that a public school or private
It
school?
was a public school, yeah.
You had the strap in a public school?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't think it was openly talked about, but it was in the office.
Like, can you imagine that now? I think of our Christian education class. You'd forget to memorize a Bible verse, a specific assigned verse for the week, or a passage, or maybe you'd be on the spot, or maybe you'd be shy, or maybe you'd have performance anxiety, like many people do with public speaking. And when called upon by the teacher, who is also the basketball coach, if you couldn't recite your scripture verses, you were assigned a wall sit. You know those quad-burning, leg-busting workouts where you sit against the wall right? Like 90 seconds, 2-minute wall sits for like 10, 11, 12-year-old boys and girls that couldn't recite scripture? What? Planking, being held in the push-up position for not having your math homework done? This is just bizarre teaching strategies. And I'm not going to start naming names, but I could fill 10 Friday roundtables with former classmates of mine just from this one school. And that school's not the worst, not even by a country mile. People that still to this day, 30, 35, 40 years later, are still carry the scars from that. And I talked to my cousin in particular, who's a proud gay man. What a beauty he is. I'm not going to speak for him, but when we start talking about our time at our private Christian school in Calgary, you can see it. You can see that the veins in his neck start to bulge. It's important that we talk about this stuff. And I'm glad that we have an audience that's up for it, and we appreciate it. You can hit like on this. It helps us make sure that more people see this interview, and you can share this with somebody that you know might benefit from this. It's difficult conversation. It's difficult subject matter. I know that. I know. But I'm grateful that you're here for it, Real Talkers. Our friends at Local Environmental, they've been ensuring that we have important conversations like this one since the very beginning. They were one of the very first sponsors to sign on to Real Talk because they knew how important it was that we have a platform, that we have a venue to really sink our teeth into the stuff that matters. Local Environmental Services is family-owned. They have been for more than a quarter century. They believe that communities deserve better than what they're getting. Better service, better prices, and more support for local causes. Whether you're looking for a front-load bin or water hauling services, maybe a landfill run, vacuum trucks, fencing, portable toilets, what have you, in Alberta and into Saskatchewan, you can keep it local. Today, request a quote at localenvironmental.ca. Hey, coming up tomorrow, it's August 11th, Thursday. It's Miracle Treat Day at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. These are the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. If you're inclined, and please make it so, you can buy a blizzard and bring health and hope to local kids in support of the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundation, which provides emergency and intensive care, surgical care, and otherwise for young people, for children and youth across Western Canada. They benefit and have benefited to the tune of 7 figures thanks to Miracle Treat Day. That's tomorrow. You can pre-order if you want to do a big order at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. We talked a lot yesterday about this essay contest, right? I know. But I just wanted to revisit this because we had a great take from Anton and we had a great take from Jenny, who both wrote in to talk about this. If you're not necessarily familiar with what we're talking about, this was an essay contest that everyone's trying to distance themselves from. The Speaker of the House at the Legislative Assembly in Alberta says he had nothing to do with it. The Associate Minister of Children's Services say it was not our problem. Nobody wants to take responsibility for awarding a bronze medal to an essay that claimed, among other things, that, quote, to try to promote women breaking into careers that men traditionally dominate is misguided and harmful, right? Or what about this, that we should reward families with medals to symbolize valuable achievements of having 2 or more children? Or what about this one, that it's sadly popular nowadays to think that Albertan children are unnecessary and that we can import, quote, foreigners to replace ourselves? That's a key word there. People are demanding answers here, and the politicians are trying to shirk responsibility. No wonder, for an embattled government, for what this is doing to the Alberta brand on a national and international stage. Did you see they're talking about this in American news coverage yesterday? This is cracking news lineups in the States, even as President Donald Trump is having documents seized by the FBI in a no-knock warrant at his Florida mansion. They're talking about the essay contest in Alberta for perspective. And so Anton sends us an email, and he says, just with regards, and Anton, I appreciate you making me think, to the author of this essay, Anton says, I'll acknowledge I know nothing about them, and I don't want to project intention on them, but here I go. He says, I want to throw out the possibility that they were maybe doing this as satire, just to grab the attention, maybe not even considering or assuming that they did not stand a chance of winning. He says, I'm reminded of a modest proposal, which I will not get into details about, but those who have read it know. Anyhow, says Anton, entering an essay is one thing, but selecting it as a winner is another. And if they did think that it was satire, they certainly could have marked it as an honorable mention as such, with a notice that it was satire after confirmation with the author. Anton says, have a great day to my fellow Real Talkers. And this one from Jenny, who says, I'm a little shaken. She says, I don't know how familiar you are with a woman by the name of Kieran Dakin. She's a town councillor in Sylvan Lake. It's about halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. Beautiful place. Sylvan Lake, she says she's a town councillor there. And she was actually a hopeful in the UCP leadership race before being disqualified, in part because it was revealed that hate group, the Soldiers of Odin, had been hanging out in one of her bars in Sylvan, like supplying her bar equipment while wearing their vests. So Jenny says the article that I've been reading, the news I've seen, shows emails sent to Ms. Dakin from Party Brass, from UCP Party Brass, stating that associations with groups like the Soldiers of Odin are unacceptable because they harm the party's reputation. She wasn't disqualified because these people are racists or anti-Semites. No. She was disqualified because the UCP can't afford another PR nightmare. Because if they do, then the NDP will take over and tyranny will reign for all eternity and we'll all die. Or something like that. Jenny says that whole thing happened, and I thought, well, at least it could have gone a lot worse, right? It's almost guaranteed they're barking up the wrong tree with Dakin, but at least they're barking, right? And then the essay contest. Jenny says, now, in no way am I suggesting that our current ruling government are Nazis, nor am I suggesting the writer of that heinous essay is a Nazi. The term is thrown around with callous disregard for how truly, profoundly horrific the Nazis were. But I am saying, however, that the historical echoes are bloody near deafening right now. Jenny says, in 1938, Adolf Hitler created a program in Germany called the Mother's Cross, and it was designed to encourage German women to have lots of babies. There was an arm of the Hitler Youth actually called Faith and Beauty, which was intended to train 18-year-old girls on how to be excellent mothers of many children. Another part of the program was the actual Mother's Cross to award women medals based on how many children they had. Women who had 5 children earned themselves a bronze medal. Women who had 6 children got a silver medal, and women who had 7 or more children received a gold medal. Jenny says, I couldn't make this up if I tried. This is an actual thing that actual Nazis did. The point that I'm trying to reach here is that fascism is very much alive and well in Alberta right now. She says, please don't be complacent about this. You know, I think it's easy to say that this government is rotten to the core and be sort of callous or even flippant about it. But at the same time, I can't think of the last time that I went into town without hiding my Magen David, my Star of David. Jenny says, I love living in the middle of nowhere, but lately I've been thinking that once my reasons for living out here are gone, I'll be moving to the big city. That from Jenny, who sent us that email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I feel like giving out the Email of the Month award early for August.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jenny. We're going to get in touch with you. We're going to get your mailing address, wherever it may be. We can ship rural, and we're going to send you one of our Real Talk studio mugs. We appreciate you really getting personal on that and putting that story on our radar. We talk about never forget. We talk about never again. And like Jenny says, I'm not calling this government Nazis. She says, I'm certainly not calling the author of this essay Nazis. I like that line in her when she said, where is it here? She said, the term is thrown around, and I agree with her 100%. The term is thrown around with callous disregard for how truly, profoundly heinous the Nazis were. But if we promise to never forget, let's look back on that Mother's Cross program from 1938 and find it relevant to what that essay contained. It's why we got to talk about this stuff. We appreciate your emails, and we appreciate how you drive the editorial content on this show. We're going to wrap with something that makes us happy. Every Wednesday, we head out to the mountains, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper. We remind ourselves about the natural, inherent, and restorative beauty in the beautiful Rocky Mountains and Jasper National Park. It's MyJasper Memories. And in this week's edition, we want to tell you about an opportunity to roll down the roof. This is one of Jasper's newest experiences, a new way for you to experience the all-time and enduring beauty that is Jasper. These are vintage tours with a modern twist, open-top touring. You can climb on board. These are brand new custom vehicles and explore the people and the places and the moments that have made the Rocky Mountain town of Jasper into what it is today. Pursuit's vintage-inspired automobiles. So these are brand new, but Johnny, they look like they're 80 years old, and they are so cool. Mm-hmm. They have the look and feel of the 1930s, including that fully open-top roof, and the guide is wearing like a time period costume, so you're going to feel like you're stepping back. But they also come with things like modern comforts, you know, power windows and climate control, and even USB charging ports for your phone. You don't want to have your phone die on you when you're trying to get the most Instagrammable moment of all time, right? You can experience the rich characters, the fascinating stories, the gorgeous views, and photo ops at literally every turn. It's the perfect way to explore the Rockies. And if it's inclement weather, no worries. They've got glass or canvas top roofs, so your plan can stay in place. So many wonderful photo spots. The guides know them all. You can get small groups, intimate groups, all the way up to 20 people. It's perfect for a corporate getaway, maybe a stagette, a wedding, an anniversary. or a special family time together in beautiful Jasper. If you wind up taking one of these open top tours, we would love to see your videos. You can use the hashtag on Instagram or Twitter, MyJasper, and the hashtag RealTalkRJ, and you could be featured in a future edition of MyJasper Memories presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Coming up tomorrow, we're grateful that he was willing to reschedule. We won't get back into our technical glitches on Friday, but we had a date with Jean Charest to review the Conservative leadership debate. It was the last one in English and en français. Jean Charest joins us on Thursday. Plus, on Friday, we're going to be talking about some of this horrific vitriol, the threats that women are receiving, journalists, particularly of color in Canada. We'll shine the spotlight on there before the week's up. Make it a great day, Real Talkers.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.